Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryang Karavavahai Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So chapter 3 talks about, firstly, about who is a spiritual person, and Krishna is a wonderful example of that. And I wonder if you have connected with Krishna so far, as you might have. What is it for you that Krishna brings out for you? Or if we would say that Krishna is an ideal spiritual person, then what would that entail for you? What does that mean for you, that Krishna is an ideal spiritual person?
In the world, but not of the world.
He shows the different levels of reality all in the one holistic way in the Gita. So the Paramartika and the Vyavaharika and Pratibhasika, all, and me can mean those three things. And you just have to have the teacher to tell you which time he's referring to each one.
Yeah, which is exactly what Thomas said. He's in the world, his body is in the world. He knows that he's much bigger than the world. Good. Pankaj?
He has the largest picture. He knows the situation from his micro to the macro, entire world. So he's got the complete picture, and therefore he's able to see the truth through and through.
Yeah, he's very equanimous and composed.
I feel he's always there for me. I mean, because for us, having grown up in this faith where for a long time from the childhood have been associated with him as a god. So to me, Krishna is the one who can remove all your, give you answers to all your problems, something like that.
For me, I like his humanness. I like his down to earth, grounded. He's not showy. He's not pretending. He's not saying that I know everything and therefore you should listen to me. He still gets involved in politics and he still wants to hear your opinion. He already knows everything and then he's listening to your opinion. So it's really very interesting play. And so I can relate to him. He's very kind of, just ordinary person and is not kind of putting himself above or below anyone, just being there, and also is cheerful, also can, make the right decisions and is very lucid in what has to be done. And he's also very active in the world. He's not, going away and he's, offering himself, his time and energy and effort. So this is all these wonderful things that we have said is what Krishna wants to show us of a normal person that's just grounded, not driven by these ideas, subjectivities, or all these ideas that we've learned, picked up from different realms and people and so on. So, and he wants to show you that just spirituality, it's just being normal, responding to situation as is called for. It's not some mystical thing. That's what a spiritual person is, just responding to what I'm being asked for, and responding in the light of what is harmonious, what will preserve that harmony for both you and I, because Ishvara's order is manifest as harmony. So that means the moment I'm out of harmony, this means that either myself or the other has in some way a gap in reference to what is to be done. That means we've forgotten Ishvara's presence in that second, which is okay. But it's very important to understand that this harmony, which is called Samanya Dharma, is what Krishna's laws and orders they manifest as, and it is designed in such a way that if you violate them, that there's a consequence. And maybe now we'll bring Thomas's example of a designer who is sitting down with a very good blueprint of a world that he's going to create, and he's going to create, he's going to put all the trees there in his computer game for a reason. He's going to then think about where should the birds make their nests, maybe in the sky. That's too weird. I'll put them in the tree. So he thinks through and through very well all the objects in the game, the mountains, what's going to inspire, how things are going to be connected. And he also puts the character there. And the character is also given a capacity to think and move from that corner of the level to the other corner of the level. So the character can choose, according to their discernment, whatever they wish. But at the same time, there are certain challenges that are presented within that level. And so the character must, find his way, and he has to think, use his or her discernment to discover what, do I do with this? And then what's this key for? What do I use this key? Do I bring it? Where do I bring it? And if the character is rude to the villagers, then you, the computer designer of that game, have made it such that the villagers will not respond well. They will take their forks and spoons and and then you have to run. So this means that you, as an intelligent creator, have well thought through from A to Z everything about how the game will look like, what is the purpose of that level, how the level will be passed, what will give the player good points, punyam, what will give the player bad points, papam, what the player has to do for passing to the next level, who does he have to contact, and if the player starts to fool around and starts to annoy his alibi or his his warrior next door, then the warrior, he needs or she needs the warrior next door to help them through passing to the next level. So this means the player has no choice but to abide by the rules of the game. He or she literally has no choice because they're not the designer of that game. The designer has made it such that you can absolutely pass those levels, but you can also stick at each level for as long as you want. So you got 10 levels, and you can say, I really like this level because it's got a lot of nice, pretty things to buy and see and enjoy. I'm just going to stick around here. I know there's a door there calling me for the next level, but I'm just going to do this for as long as I'm going to extract every ounce of pleasure that I can get out of this level. Now, eventually, the player discovers that this inner gap is something's missing. I kind of had enough of this level. I just want to now move forward. And so even that has been designed by the creator. So there's no way that the player can ever remain in any one level for a long, long time. It is such this compulsion that's called the inner conscience, that it just wants to make you move forward in that game. The rules of the game is called a samanya dharma, but the individual roles that you play is called your personal responsibilities and duties, your swadharma. Now, the animals in that game, they're programmed by you, the designer, to just do what they're meant to do, to procreate, to survive, and to fight or flight. So in a sense, they have basic privileges, but for the most part, they're programmed to continue the cycle of the animal kingdom, and thus the feeding system. But you, the character, who's also given the capacity to move their arms and how you want to move your arms and for how quickly you want to move your arms, that is given to you as a privilege. Now, nothing, you say as a designer, nothing in my game comes for free. Those who are given a privilege to stay at a level and do whatever they want at each level, they have a responsibility. And because I've given you a responsibility, you also have a consequence system done onto you. And that consequence system is when you go out of, you don't treat the villagers very well. You step on other people's steps. Maybe you're just a little bit mischievous, or you just create some disharmony in that game. And it just sort of affects, right? You create disharmony, somebody else sees that, they get agitated. Now they start to lash it out on their family. So it's a very interconnected system that you have designed. And so when, so this Swadharma is individual roles that we all play. Now, what happens in Swadharma is we have these roles, and sometimes these roles can get disconnected. So this is what can happen sometimes. Okay, so suppose you have a role of an employee, and you have a mother role and a father role. Okay, very simple. Now, sometimes we said there's a spillover. So sometimes we can take the employee role and spill it into the mother or the father role in a way that shouldn't be done, right? Maybe it's a little bit too strict or like dominating or something. However, there's other times where the person, see, you are made of all of these roles at once. So what happens is sometimes we over-identify with this role, and we tend to forget the good qualities that we carry as a mother or a father, and we don't take those good qualities like empathy and patience and compassion, and we don't bring them into our employee. And we don't bring the good qualities from the employee role, such as professionalism and not lashing out too quickly, and we don't bring them into our mother and father role. So we miss out the mother misses out the wisdom of the employee. The father misses out the wisdom of the employee, and the employee misses out the wisdom of your mother and father role. So a complete integrated person, when we say swadharma, recognizes I play as an individual many roles in my life, and I can definitely use wisdom from each one of my roles to play and make the right possible decisions. And so this is what we call an integrated person, a spiritually integrated person. The moment we just associate with one and we forget about like teacher, and we forget about I'm also a friend, then this becomes distorted. And then we don't become a good friend. And a friend has nothing to share because they're disconnected from the teacher. So this means that when we remember, I play many roles, and therefore I'm much more than the teacher. I'm much more than the father, the friend, the spiritual admirer, the truth admirer. I'm a participant, a contributor in this world, in this game that's been well designed. Okay? So this is Swadharma. And lastly, talks about your responsibility. So now that you are endowed with these privileges in this world, Krishna tells Arjuna, you can't just walk away because there are people dependent upon different roles that we play. So this means that if you walk away, they will follow that, and they will too get influenced, and you will corrupt or you will disturb the harmony. And so when people look at you, they see two things in you. Number one, what you say, and number two, what you do. What you say consistently and what you do, that gets mimicked by your circle of influence. And you'll probably testify to this, that, whoever you're listening to, they tend to influence you in some ways. And so the question is, do you want to be influenced? But how do you want to be influenced? So that's the real question. Now let's talk about what this leader is in verse 23. Yadihyaham na varteyam jatu karmanya tandritaha mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. Read.
Or should I never engage myself in action without being lazy, Arjuna? People would follow my example in every way.
So he wants to say that this wise person, a jnani, they are proactive, they're not lazy. There's someone that challenges the typical, as Krishna does, a typical spiritual role or spiritual, what does it mean to be a spiritual leader? Or see, we're all spiritual leaders. Don't think that you're not. And so he says that not only does a spiritual person, or you could say ordinary person, because we're all spiritual beings, not only do they choose Krishna, just like Arjuna went to, and Duryodhana went to Krishna. And who did Krishna choose? Who did Arjuna choose? He chose the truth. Krishna stands for that which is most attractive, what matters most. So Arjuna chose not only Krishna, and he chose Krishna over the army, and army represents, right, fame, wealth, which is all lovely, right? It's the other three, kama and artha, which is good, but if you don't have the other two, dharma and moksha, then it can become distorted. So not only does he choose the truth over the army, but also engages in his or her duty. In other words, does what is being called for based on your uniqueness in this world, based on whatever you can do. And this actually challenges the common spiritual person role that many find unfavorable. Now, the reason why the spiritual person is not found favorable is when you think of a, quote, spiritual person, what comes to mind? You can see it on your faces, right? Yes. So it's not entirely this, involved, responsible, but maybe a little bit more awareness or kind of to oneself, or long hair, hippie style, whatever it is, right? So this means the world doesn't have very favorable image. And now why is that? Because a spiritual person in the common parlance carries contradictions. And on one hand, they say, you know, you need to keep your mind silent. The other hand says you need to keep your mind active. Which one is it? You see, so it doesn't have that discerning capacity. You can't say that Earth is both globe, but it's also flat. Which one is it? No, it's both. You know, it's all okay. Everything's just let it all be. You know, all perspectives are valid. You can't think like that. Nor can you say that moksha is both attained by knowledge and by action. Which one is it? Is it through action or is it through knowledge? Is the earth flat or is it globe? Is the mind to be kept silent or is it to be kept active and engaged? Which one is it? So a spiritual person has to truly make up their mind. Another example, a common one, is in yoga world. So there is from Patanjali Yoga Sutra. In the yoga world, you take this very seriously. I want to take my chitta vritti, my thoughts of the mind, and nirodha, eliminate them, or total cessation of thoughts. For this reason, they have a lot of conflicts or resistance, not conflict, but resistance to Advaita Vedanta, because Vedanta says totally opposite. It says you don't stop your mind at all, you use it to solve problems. In fact, the word nirodha, if you look at it into the dictionary, it doesn't mean cessation. And if it does that, every Sanskrit word has multiple definitions. It means management. That means management of your mind's stories, not cessation.
Is this because this is ignorance attributing consciousness to the mind, to a physical attribute? I think that's where confusion and ignorance comes from. Spiritual person has to be clear, so that involves no thinking. Kind of like that ignorance for that.
So you bring that which is shuddhi, totally pure, and nirgunam, you bring without any attributes, that which is ultimately pure and perfect, which is satyam, and you attribute that onto the mind. And so you want to make the mind perfect, you want to make the body perfect, you want to be perfectly a dharmic person, say the right perfect things, you want to look for the perfect guru. Now on top of that, you also have childhood issues. So this means when we grew up, we looked at our mom and dad as gods. Most of us did, whether we know it or not. And so we kept this image. And now in the spiritual world, we are looking for, whether it's a male or a female, looking for a god in the guru. And since nobody can qualify for that because everyone's ignorant, everyone has Stula Vidya, secondary ignorance, you may have removed who you are. That's Mula Vidya. You solved your Mula Vidya, but you still got secondary ignorance as a wise person. You still don't know how to communicate well. You still don't know how to soothe someone. You still don't know nonviolent communication model. Yeah, exactly. You still don't know so many things, but we're looking for this perfect guru with perfect words, with perfect teaching. And we just now, whose era is that? It's not the guru's era. It's the era of the person, as Lorena said, who keeps on attributing godliness, that which is pure, divine, all knowledge, all power, putting it onto the body mind of the guru and their partner also. I had once a girlfriend who says, are you God? You know, and she just saw me as a God. And I was really agitated by this. Like, I'm not God, dude. You know, no,
dude.
I want you to be God, you know, Andre. No, I'm not God. Stop saying that, because it's putting pressure, right? So it makes you this person that has to comply to these big standards. Krishna thus says, choose your spiritual guides carefully, because they will influence you whether you like it or not. They do come through to you no matter how many years you are, because you admire them. And that admiring opens up you, makes you more vulnerable. So you're opening yourself up to them. So do you want to choose someone like Krishna, who confronts life and deals with challenges and uses every challenge as an opportunity to learn and to refine your responses? Or do you want someone that talks well and speaks extremely, you know, fluently, however, real life experience is lacking? Also, becoming inactive what would happen if he became lazy in this verse that's enacted? Then everyone would follow him. They would say, hey, Krishna's going off to the mountains. He's just sitting down and doing nothing. Therefore, we should follow suit, because that's what a wise person does. So he cannot afford to do this for the rest of us. And he also says that avoiding actions doesn't solve any problems. It only amplifies them. They keep on stacking and become harder and harder to solve down the road. So this means attack problems head on when they're there. Obviously, see, real life, you have to give it some time for that to resolve. But inaction is not a solution, because it is a silly argument. Why is it a silly argument? It's like saying that, hey, you should never engage in any conversation or have any friends, because it was going to lead to quarrels eventually. Yeah, it could, but it's also going to lead to wonderful experiences too. Or it says something like, you know, action, don't act in this world, it's always going to lead to entanglement. It could, but it can also lead to detanglement, right? So you cannot categorically put anything in this world. And an example was Dasharatha, who was a Yodha king, and he was told by Kaikeyi to give Bharat the kingdomship, the Ayodhya. And both Dasharatha and Bharat made a mistake. See, when Kaikeyi proposed that deal, that Rama is not going to be the king, but Bharat will be the king, what could have Dasharatha done? He could have said, let's ask our fellow subjects of the kingdom, what do they want? Who do they want the king to be? Let's ask Bharat, does he even want to be a king? No, Dasharatha didn't say that. He went straight to his son, Bharat, and he says, you're going to be king. Now, what did Bharat do? He didn't challenge his father. So what does this show you? Even Bharat could have said, wait, let's ask the subjects and let's ask Ram. What does he want? So look at this. Dasharatha is a leader and he was not questioned. So what does this show you? Goes back to Tula Vidya. Even if you're a leader, you still make mistakes. Therefore, you still have a responsibility to even question, or to, you know, in a non-confrontational way, to question an authoritative word coming from a leader, because no one is purely, you know, knowledgeable in everything. So, thus, finally, Krishna says to Arjuna, think about your repercussions of abandoning Kurukshetra. Think about it. I'm not saying don't abandon, just think about what it's going to do to all your fellow followers, and what they will then think of what a leader like you, Arjuna, does. They should all too abandon. Is that going to be wise? You think about it, Arjuna. And then Arjuna is like, could you go on to the next verse and tell me more? And then Krishna says, sure, I'll tell you about verse 24. And he says that in verse 24, that a wise person is not only proactive, but also sane.
I understood that Dasharatha only did that because of the promise is given, two boons promised to Kaikeyi. And so he couldn't take back his word. He already promised to do that.
Sure.
So he was cornered in a position where he couldn't do anything else. So he wasn't thinking of anyone else other than what he promised his wife.
Yeah, so he was thinking about one person only at the expense of the larger.
Yeah, that is selfish, but
yeah, it is. So
yeah.
That's what he wants to show us, I guess. It's one way of looking at it. Utsi de yurime lokaha na kuryam karma chedaham sankarasya chakartasyam upahanyam imaf prajaha.
If I were not to perform action, these people would perish. I would be the author of confusion in the society, and I would destroy these beings.
I would be the author of confusion if I were not to perform any action. So this is it's not the right thing to do. See, everyone that's born is born of ignorance. That's why we don't know. So everyone has errors that we make. This is why we make errors, because we don't know. And it says that because you carry ignorance, and I carry ignorance, everyone carries, right, ignorance. we never quite see an object for what it really is. We always see an object slightly colored by our perception. So what a sane person is, so then what is a sane person? A sane person is one that has decent amount of objectivity. That means they can still operate in the world and be an author of harmony. By their presence, harmony gets authored. And through this, they can make right decisions that are harmonious and good for others. Conversely, what is an insane person? An insane person is one that is operated by subjectivities. So if you say someone, you're insane, how can you think that? You're insane. So what do you, like in that moment, you're really saying that your thought was so out of alignment with the reality that you are insane. That means you've got your ideas, right, overshadowing what is to be done. However, every insane person still has a relative level of sanity. A completely insane person would eat a rock thinking it's food, but nobody does that.
There's a thing where people eat dirt. It's a certain condition where people eat dirt.
And that's a tradition, right? So I'm just wondering yeah, maybe that's just inculcated, so it's not questioned. So maybe that's a cultural insanity, cultural subjectivity. You could, one way, the other way, there's a meaning behind it. But I'm just thinking about just not able to see and interpret a rock as a food, and you start to eat a rock. So that would be quite insane. In fact, I have heard some people on LSD who have done that. They wanted to walk through walls, or they thought they could jump off a building and they would survive. And that's the example of it. What is thus subjective thinker or an insane thinking person? What do you think it is? Not doing what is to be done, easy over what is necessary, letting your own ideas cover up what's called for, right? So things like that. In other words, you're operating from your own personal bubble, and you just refuse to let people in because it's such a warm, cozy place to be in that bubble that's been well designed and protected and built by, for some reason that people put themselves into. And it's I remember one time a daughter was angry at her mother, and she was 9 years old. And the mother told her, no, she can't hit his brother, even though the brother hit the daughter. The daughter hit the brother back, and then the brother complained, to the mother. The brother was only 3 years old. And so the mother scolded the daughter, who's 9. And the daughter got so angry, and she just rushed to the bed. And I went into the room to soothe her. And I could just see her in her little bubble, like, I'm going to kill my mother. I'm never going to talk to her again. I'm going to do this. I was just listening to the whole conversation. She was completely inside. And we do this also as adults. We think of these things, and that's called that bubble of, it's just cozy. It's just cozy. So you have to pop that bubble so you can come back to here and you can appreciate this world. So Krishna says, I must thus set an example for these people so they do not abandon their work, because their work builds your discrimination. And your discrimination, your critical thinking skills, affects the quality of your life. That's why I cannot afford to tell people not to act and to take quick pills and to go for quick solutions, because when you are a participant and doing your duty, you're thrown different situations, and those situations are always unique, and they always trigger something in you. They always bring something new out, and each time it does, you have a chance to apply the teaching on what you're thinking, and resolve it in a new way, and thus improve the quality of your overall thinking, overall perception of the situation, Every time you do that, you reduce this individual that wants to have it my way and it wants it no other way. And this individual, this ahamkara, has to be thus a little bit shaken up. And when it gets shaken up, life becomes so much more enjoyable because you don't carry rigidities, how I am to be treated and how the world must be for my happiness. The greatest joy is when this gets softened up, this rigid individual that wants it my way. That is truly, that's when life becomes really enjoyable, and you can be with different faces, personalities, and characters who may not have been, your best friends before, but now they just don't bring this agitation in you. You're able to be okay in their presence, and you don't have to speak to them, but you still they don't pop out in your existence. They're just another, being like everyone else is, and you just have so much more comfort in your world, and that's what's called harmony. So this means you're now aligned to harmony. So this means when I am disappointed or agitated or frustrated or annoyed or anything's rattling me, it means that I'm not completely in harmony with Ishvara's order. Because in Ishvara's order, there is no such thing as disharmony. There's only harmony. There's only peace. So relative to the amount of peace I have is proportionate to how aligned I am to objectivity. The more subjectivity, the more potential chances of impatience and agitations. And the more I have objectivity, the more I come back to here and now. What is Vedanta? Very simple. It's here and now, this. It's about this moment, because there's only this moment here and now. That's all Vedanta wants to show us. How to respond appropriately in this moment. How am I perceiving this moment now? Forget about 10 seconds ago. That's already gone. The only true moment where Ishvara abides is right now, here. And so Vedanta wants to bring you back to the present moment, nothing else. Anything other than that is just memory. You've now switched yourself out of Ishvara, philosophizing what Ishvara is. You've gone out of Ishvara to talk about Ishvara. The only moment you're ever in contact with the truth is here and now, this very exact moment. Gone, this moment, now. This is the Vedantic message.
Like you mentioned in a couple of previous things, now becomes the past.
Yeah, now is always becoming the past, and thus, and so we're learning to just bring our minds to, to recognize the wonder of this moment, and it's always going to be this message. No matter what you do, what school you go to, all they're trying to do is just bring you to the present moment. The moment you are in your present moment, and then tilt onto philosophy. Now philosophy becomes my refuge. Now I have to philosophize and tell you how things are, this or that. But to be speaking from the present moment, then you're not afraid, because you recognize that you're not, see, what brings you fear? Fear is always a memory. Let's say you're not going to do this very well, you're not going to succeed, people are not going to like you, you failed before. This is all memory, just dumping itself, subjectivities, onto here and now. It's overriding Ishvara. And so we have to say, dear memory, I know you have a good job of reminding me, but right now I don't need this. So I want you to remind me to come back and recognize the appropriateness, the truth in this moment. That's what you want to do, dear memory. I get it. You want to tell me how I'm not good enough. That's all gone, right? I appreciate you've done it for 50 years. That's great. Thank you very much. Now it's time to change your tune and give me some good wisdom, just to help me remember that it's all about this moment in this present. Memory says, aye, I'll work on that, hopefully. Now the next verse, it continues about this wise person, which is now called Vidvan. That means the one who is a possessor of knowledge. The most sane perform action to benefit the whole. Verse 25. Saktah karmanya vidvamsaha yatha kurvanti bharata kurya vidvams tatha saktaha chikir shurloka sangraham.
Partha, Arjuna, just as the unwise who are attached to the results perform action, so too would the wise perform action, but without attachment, desirous of doing that which is for the protection of the people.
So the unwise perform actions attached to results. That's the first statement. And they're called avidvan. That means not wise, not a possessor of this vision. And what do? They undertake actions, understandably so, with the intention of gaining something, right? Anticipated outcomes. So there is something that I want in the future, and all of my present actions are tactfully designed to get that in the future. So this, in a sense, creates two emotions in you. Number one, it creates excitement, doesn't it? Because you think I'm in control, I'm definitely doing the right things to get that. So, but it's also covered with anxiety. So you got excitement and anxiety at the same time, because truly, I don't really know if I'm going to get it. So it becomes quite difficult to enjoy truly something, because who knows? And they lack what we said in verse 22. This is a term we used, kartavya buddhi. Kartavya buddhi. They lack an intellect which says actions are to be performed for the sake of actions. Just because it is to be done, that's why it's done. Why are you doing this action? Because it is the right thing to do and it is beneficial for the whole. That is why I'm doing it. I don't need a personal reason. It's just a good thing to do. So they lack kartavyam buddhi. Therefore, they operate from, if I perform what I'm about to do, then I will gain goodness for me. And this is okay, but it comes at a cost. I will gain what is good for me. The cost is it reinforces, solidifies the very character in the computer game that you want to understand is you're much bigger than this character. So this is the cost. And every time you solidify this character, that is called antahkarana ashuddhi. So what is it that makes your intellect non-pure? It's the reinforcement of the character that you're playing, okay? And then it says, the wise perform actions without attachment. So now the wise is called a vidvan. And so the vidvan knows who they are. They know they are the cause of the universe. They already know that everything is already accomplished. They already know that there is nothing more to accomplish. They already know that as far as accomplishment goes, that is in reference to the worldly objects, but it has no bearing on accomplishing me. So they're already okay with their nature, and they know it is full. But it doesn't make such a person not act. Krishna keeps on saying this over and over again. Instead, it makes that vidvan change relationship to objects. Not discard the objects, not avoid them, just perceive them differently. Objects are objects. And there's two primary shifts that happen for the wise person when your relationship to objects are changed. Because if you think about your life, you're always dealing with objects. All our conversations are about objects. We connect through objects. We fall in love with objects. We fall out of love with objects. We daydream about objects. We pursue the spiritual world of objects. We go into experiences, objects. Okay, so the relationship to objects has been changed. And what is this relationship? It is twofold. Firstly, the wise person performs simply because kartavyam, it is to be done. That's it. This is wonderful. There's no complications. Why do you perform? Why do you do what you do? It is to be done. In other words, the pleasure is in the action itself. In fact, you can only find pleasure in the action itself if you have dealt with your insecurities and your deficiencies. Otherwise, if I've got insecurities, I'm only acting to fill myself. So by the virtue of them knowing they are already okay, everything's fine, they just do what is to be done. The action becomes a source of satisfaction in your life. And through that, you're able to be very lucid about the way that you offer and give to the world. And people like you because of this, because you're fully involved, you're a participant, you are engaged, you are giving them your full attention, and they notice this and they like you. And they say, hey, what's so, I don't understand, I just like them. Why? Because you've dealt with your own insecurities, that I'm not good enough. And the second is, your purpose, according to the verse, shifts. So going back to the verse, it says, doing which is to be done for the protection of the people. So in other words, loka sangraha. What is the motivation? This is an important question for the wise person. Why does a wise person, a vidvan, act? What's the motivation? Are you doing it for yourself? No. According to the verse, loka sangraha or loka kshema, welfare, by actively adding value to whoever you're associated with. Whoever it is, it doesn't matter to be family or employees, whoever it is. There's just something about you that just wants to add value innocently. You always want to people say you're shining, you're just unique, but you don't see it that way. You're just sort of, I just want to add value. Just value is being added to the environment. Like what makes you do this? Like, what's going on inside your mind? It's a very tough question to answer. I don't want to answer it. I just want to add value. And so, therefore, a verse, jnani, or a vidvan, is driven by, the verse says, chikirshu, a desire to prevent others from falling into erroneous notions. That's the desire of the wise person. So innocent. Why are you doing what you're doing? Because in me, there's a desire to prevent others from falling into unbecoming ways. I don't want them to make mistakes because I've walked the path. Now, when you do this, it's a surprising journey because you meet others and they say, what is this nonsense you're talking about? No, 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 God is over there. No, no, you don't know anything. You know, you have to clean up your childhood issues. You're just being a narcissist. You've got a spiritual ego, but you already went through this like 20 years ago. So even if you tell them, you know what, I understand, but I already went through that. No, 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 no. You see, you've got a spiritual ego. You've got things to resolve. No matter what you say. So Krishna, very nice message here, says, do not try to disturb them. Is this going to be the next verse? Let me just see. Next verse. I'll talk about that. But for now, very important. Why is the wise person acting? There's no personal reason. It's just an innocent outpouring of wanting to help others. That's it. There's no explanation. And so just like a dog, why does a dog want to, bury a bone? You ask a dog that, the dog's gonna just say, get away, I'm gonna bury my bone anyway. So dog doesn't want your philosophy. So if you take Krishna, for instance, he is an embodiment of loka kshema, right? An embodiment of welfare. But does he at the same time let people walk over him? He is soft. He is accommodating. He does let people say what they want to say. He did let Duryodhana say in the Hastinapur palace. He did let Karna tell him, I don't want to go back to the Pandavas. He did receive these messages, but does he just sort of, go, oh yeah, just this little false spiritual humility, it's weakness mode. I'm so humble that I don't really tell you who I am. I don't tell you anything about me. But sometimes you have to just advertise yourself. Otherwise, if people just think, oh, you're just a spiritual person who's just so humble. Who are you? Oh, I'm just a seeker, looking for the truth. I've got a long way to go. It's, some of us would think you're a weak person.
Stand up for ourselves.
Stand up for yourself, yeah. And standing up for yourself does involve acknowledging your roles. You're not just a small fish. You do have, so don't be afraid to say, I am, a physicist, a PhD, a doctor, a, programmer, this or that. Don't be afraid to say that, with humility, of course. And you will find that people treat you very different than if you just say, you're a nobody. I'm a nobody. I'm just a seeker. So it's a balance. So that's what Krishna did. He says, in chapter 4, he will say, I am an avatara. He didn't say, oh, I'm just a person passing by in this world, it all doesn't matter, like the wind. I am an avatara. Oh, you got an ego. No, it's not about that. I have to state my relative role as an avatara here so that you will listen to me. And then finally it says, without attachment to results. Krishna keeps saying this over and over again. Does Krishna ever mention the word emotion in the Gita? I don't think he even mentioned the word emotion once. He does desire. I mean, chapter 16 is full of it, right? Desire and accommodation and all of that. But he doesn't explicitly mention the word emotion. So now when he keeps on saying without attachment to results, you have to look deeper into the statement. When you get something, when someone offers you something or life shows you here, is there not an emotion involved in that moment? Some form of emotion? Of course, you get a promotion, there's an emotion. Someone tells that there's an accident, you will naturally be concerned. So that's the result. So when there is a result, when life offers you something and says, here, my dear, here, then there's an emotion involved. So what he's saying is, when something happens, it's not possible to be without emotions. That's the first one. Because you're designed to have responses to situations. It's not possible to stop your emotional mechanism. It's an indicator what needs to change and what's going on. Unfortunately, it can become misinterpretation, and a person says, I should not have any emotion to situations. I should not be disturbed, and I should have samatvam, total composure. So it becomes these rigid shoulds and shouldn'ts. My opinion to that is, it's not that the culture has done that. It's just that when you offer great advice to someone that's busy, there will be a tendency for that to become these concrete black or whiters. And so you have to shake that up a little bit. But I've seen so many that are going through this should and shouldn't mode. And I'm like, look, this is not what the Gita is saying at all. I mean, it's a starter, but you have to shake that up. Otherwise, because right now always demands a different situation to what I've heard before. Should and shouldn't is a general guideline, but right now wants a new response, a new, fresh response tailored for the situation. And if I'm carrying two binaries, should and shouldn't, that's going to be an incompatibility, because this is always a shade of gray in the present moment. And if I carry should and shouldn't, you can't put them together. Therefore, they struggle. And there's an inner conflict. On one hand, I should always act nice. But on the other hand, to the teacher, to the guru, to the parents. But on the other hand, inside me, there's a message that says, enough. I've had enough. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, I need to go. No, but you should be polite. Don't go. So what are we doing? We're training our emotions to be shut down, to say they're unimportant. And yet your emotions are indicators telling you, here's what needs to happen to continue flowing with life. Behind these words, without attachment to results, emotional management. And there's 3 ways to manage your emotions. First of all, those positive emotions that you experience, such as curiosity,
Love,
joy,
kindness,
Empathy.
Compassion.
compassion. It's reaching out. Empathy is when you reach out, that's compassion. Do you want this eliminated? Not at all. So positive emotions we are to cultivate. So you think about what are those positive things that are helping you, that are creating harmony in your life, that you can cultivate. Then there are those things that are insignificant. They're not that pleasant, but they're insignificant. They can be let go because they're just one-timers. And there is the third category, those things which are not pleasant, but they keep on reoccurring. Those things need work on. For example, if you keep on having a story about something or someone in a that's maybe too too rigid, then you can change the story about what happened and why it happened and what it's taught you and how you have become a better person and how you have learned not to fall for the same things and how it's made you more mature and how it is probably the best thing that's ever happened to you if you choose to make it that. So first, 3 options. 1, cultivate healthy emotions. 2, release or relinquish those insignificant negative emotions. Just 1 time or 2 times someone says something nasty to you, learn to let it go. Change your focus. It's 1 time. And 3, find those areas which are repetitive, which kind of bother. They're not too bad, but they still bother. Change those stories. That's emotional management. And also, see, I mean, this is preliminary that we say. Just you recognize that joy is something that I don't want to relinquish. In that sense, you call it positive. And frustration or anger or hatred is something that I don't want. In that sense, we call it negative. Otherwise, even this negative and positive, you can, you don't need to put these words onto them. In fact, it's really funny, but the so-called negative only shows you what I really want, doesn't it? If you keep on having hate, I don't want to hate anymore. I hate hating. Therefore, I want to love. So hate is just a marker, a pointer to what you really want. So in that sense, even hate is not negative. Verse 26. So the Vidvan, the wise person, doesn't actively disturb those who are lacking critical thinking skills, doesn't actively disturb those who are into pseudo-spirituality, doesn't actively disturb them. Na buddhi bhedam janayed, ajnanam karma sanginam, joshayet sarva karmani, vidvan yukta samacharan.
The one who knows the Atman should not create any disturbance in the understanding of the ignorant who are attached to the results of action. The wise person, steadfast in the knowledge, him and herself performing all the actions well, should encourage the ignorant into performing all actions.
So this is the wise person doesn't disturb those who are non-karma yogis. That means ordinary people who are still after the results of actions, nor those into pseudo-spirituality. Because what Vedanta says is that the very world that you see and that is a seeming source of frustration and disappointment, the material world, the world of desire, that very world that we find to be unpleasant and disappointing and bring anxiety, the Vidvan says that very world you need to see the truth. That's the very world where you will find what you're looking for. The very thing that I've been avoiding and thinking is the source of my frustration, and therefore it is to be left alone and to be retreated from, that very thing is your key to recognizing what you want. Abhidvan says, wow, that's amazing. I thought the world was a source of retracting from. No. So the Vidvan says the world is Ishvara. It's just a manifestation of Ishvara. And Ishvara is knowledge and power, which is obtaining as the forms that are frustrating you, the very experiences that you are in conflict with, is manifesting as the laws that are operating and that you depend on, like your brain to work and your heart to keep on going. Those are all manifestations of Ishvara. And the people that you don't like are also governed by the very same laws as you are. And the very forms that you dislike is the very form that you are made of. The very substance, you're also made of that same substance. And you're thinking, it's amazing because this world, I thought, was just kind of forms to manage. But then a Vidvan says, well, the relationship, it changes because there are your lessons. And you say, so this very Ishvara is not someone that is personal. It's an impersonal entity. Ishvara is not here actively having some personal issues against you. She's really attractive. I'm going to jolt her with enlightenment, right? And he's just lazy. I'm going to make him lazy. Ishvara doesn't do this. Ishvara is impersonal. Impersonal means that there is no entity who's got any likes or dislikes towards you. This is wonderful. That means there's no one hating me out there. There's no one loving me out there. Ishvara is infallible. That means his laws never fail us. That's why we depend upon waking up and not flying off into the sky. You know that the gravity is going to work. You know that you're not going to die right now. No one's afraid of dying right now. Are you afraid of just randomly dying? Probably not. And in fact, those who are about to die, there's suddenly some voice sometimes that just comes and it lets you know, I've only got a few days to live. But until that moment happens, you know that you're going to live one more day. And that's amazing. So you are trusting these laws all the time. So not only is Ishvara impersonal, has got no personal agenda against you or for you. Ishvara doesn't want you to get enlightened, by the way, nor does Ishvara want you to be ignorant. Because Ishvara is not an entity who is actively making us, giving us a hard time and teaching us a lesson. Rather, Ishvara is the material cause of the universe in a form of objects, in a form of teachers, and you just reshuffle those objects and use them for yourself until you discover that some objects are no longer for you and some objects are for you. Just like the computer game character. He's been shuffling himself with these objects in this village, and he's like, you know, thank you very much. I have learned some interesting lessons, but it's time for me to go because I still feel a gap in me. So I'm going to continue going. So this means that Ishvara offers you the villagers, offers you the trees, offers you the air, and you just use that to help yourself. So who's really helping you? You're helping yourself. But also you could say Ishvara is helping you, but not actively, just by supplying itself in a form of objects. In that way, Ishvara is helping you. And Ishvara is also, we say, uninvolved. This means Ishvara is not actively scripting out your life. There's no book written for Asha, chapter 5 that hasn't yet unfolded and will unfold, and she's going to go through a seriously hard time in chapter 5. This is how we think because of this prarabdha karma, destiny. But destiny is always mixed with purushartha, your self-effort. So you are in essence always overriding your destiny with your present actions. They're both working together. So there's no script written out there for you that you will get enlightened, you know, in 2 years, and you just have to wait it out now. Ishvara is impersonal, has nothing against you or for you, infallible, is perfect in its laws, never fails you. That means when you play by the rules of the game, you win no matter what. That's how it's designed. And is uninvolved, is not writing out your script for you. There's no script that says that you're going to go through a certain time. Yes, you will, but at the same time, that's going to be a modification of what you do right now. And when you understand this about Ishvara, which is the world that we are participating in, your relationship to objects changes naturally. Because now no object is out there to get me. No object is out there to punish me. And you start to develop a certain trust for the world. I don't have to worry anymore about being punished or rewarded because any punishing or rewarding is my own doing. So really, I am in relative amount of control here. If the computer character starts to do the wrong thing, he's going to get many negative points in the game. It's simple as that. So this means when you start to recognize that Ishvara is just giving you possibilities, then you start to ask a different kind of question. What possibilities am I collapsing every day? I've got some anger issues. Okay. And what's the possibility of resolving those anger issues? Oh, I've got some shyness. I tend to put objects bigger than me. Situations become bigger than me. What's the possibility? Recognizing that an object is never bigger than me. I'm always there, able to handle the situation very well. If I put my mind to it, it's possible. My issue is that I feel a little bit small, you know, or a little bit insignificant. Okay, what's the possibility? You can remove that feeling. That is a feeling. You're bigger than that feeling. It's just a feeling in your mind, and the possibility is that you can remove that from your mind. So if you start to see Ishvara as possibilities, your whole relationship changes to what it means to live. That means every moment we are given possibilities, and if we put the right action, we can collapse those possibilities and solve the very things that is not in our best self-interest. That's all Ishvara is. Possibilities to be collapsed every single day. And it is up to you to what possibilities you wish to collapse. And then it also said that the spiritual leader, not only does it show you what Ishvara is, but also shows you that the four pursuits, which is right, wealth, money, ethics, and liberation, especially money and pleasure, they too don't get discarded because they all have a purpose for our well-being. Without pleasure or some delights in life or some family time or some recreation time, you would go insane. Go back to the word of insanity, absence of kama and artha, right? And that's why a spiritual person doesn't exclude wealth from their repertoire. They know that wealth is required to feel a sense of security so that I can learn without worrying. And pleasure, of course, we all have our wonderful, things that we do. And all of this balances out your life. Therefore, he doesn't or she doesn't discourage, says the verse, a karma sangina, the one who is actively engaged for the sake of rewards. Because it is Ishvara's game, isn't it? And every player is going to be at a different corner in the game, according to their discretion, according to what they think is best for them. Now, if one player in the game says, oh, you idiot over there, that's a useless corner, I've been in that corner already, you're going to spend, no learning takes place there. The other player will hear you, but from their standpoint, they need to be there for whatever reason, for their growth. Eventually, they're going to come in the right place, but that's okay. In fact, they are in the right place where they're at. A spiritual leader doesn't discourage those who are still in the world of action or pursuing pseudo-spiritual ideas or saying things like that Advaita is wrong, it's partial or it's incomplete or the Gita is old and it's useless. He doesn't disturb them because he or she knows they are at that point. They want an experience and they think experience is the ultimate. But you already know that experience and knowledge, they're both mithya. So whether you say it's experience, whether you say knowledge, they're both just mithya, pointing to the same reality. But if you say this to them, what they're going to say, you see, Advaita again is philosophizing. So there's a certain time that you just have to relinquish this mind and let it discover for its own. Also, a wise person doesn't disturb a lazy mind. Why? Because in chapter 14, I think, we'll talk about the gunas. And we know that you start out at a certain, maybe lazy mode, right? And if you tell a lazy person, a spiritual person is one who does nothing, number one, they're going to use that to justify their inactivity. So what do you do as a wise person say? You say, hey, here's a better way to live. Become a little bit rajasic. Go and be selfish. Go and fulfill your desires. Go become active. So you're gently guiding them through a stage. And when you become a little bit more rajasic, people usually start to cut corners because they want a quick way. This is a natural human behavior, okay? So then you say to that person, the one that's very now selfish and very passionate about the world, I want it all for me. That's the perfect person to whom you can sell the Gita to. You can say, hey, I get it. You got a lot of good things, but you know what? What if I were to sell you peace of mind, an amazingly clear mind that you can see deeper through realities? You can see so much more than you can see right now. Ooh, that sounds interesting. Good, come over. I will sell you a sattvic mind. And so they start to begin very early practices. And when they develop a sattvic mind, then the wise person says, finally, well done. Now I want to show you, you are guna tita. You are free of even your sattvic mind. So see how they gently guide him through the journey.
I was just thinking, sometimes that rajasic mind and that sort of mindset can go on for lifetimes and life. You can be the richest man on the planet and still not be interested in where are the limitations of this.
And so the wise person doesn't disturb and say your money is useless. There's no place for that, because you and I are wearing clothes by what kind of owners? You know, they probably are very passionate about business. So see, suppose you have a spiritual leader who says a wise person is only one type of person. And so this is going to give you a little bit, you know, confusion, because you'll never be like who you're told you're supposed to be. And this is shown in the Mahabharata. How many wise people we have there? Mahabharata, 3. We have Vidur, who is very quiet. He's sort of in the background scenes, isn't he? We have Krishna, who's active participant, and we have Vyasa. Now, Vyasa, who is a rishi, but also is quite active in terms of receiving practitioners and telling them. So they're very different personalities, aren't they? Active one, more in a more kind of in a background one, and more kind of quiet one. Different personalities. They all know their nature. They all know who they are, but different forms of participation. Now, when you see this, you stop giving these messages who the wise person is. Thus, the Vidvan informs and says there's no one marker for what a Buddha looks like. Stop getting this image in your mind of how you're supposed to be. This is an image. Pop. That's insanity. Pop the insanity. And when you pop the insanity, then you're able to operate more objectively. Now, the verse then says, word for word, the one who knows, right, that Atman, that self, should not create any disturbance in the understanding of the ignorant. When you have this knowledge, there's a compulsion to do 2 things. One is to then say how chanting has no purpose, prayers have no purpose, japa has no purpose, yoga has no purpose. That's one option. The second option is you say, you kind of get more philosophical into these ideas, and you want to kind of say whether ignorance is an active entity or whether it's a passive entity. None of these are done by the wise person. They don't disturb the one who is still guided by this need to do for the sake of results or for the sake of preserving this spiritual image. Thus, Krishna says, or warns against creating buddhi bhedam, warning against disturbing the disturbance of others' understanding. Do not disturb others' disturbed understanding. What a message. You got a disturbed understanding. I'm not going to disturb your disturbed understanding. Why? Because there's a certain art form, how you get across it. And they've been protecting this for a long time. If you go in and say you're wrong, it may not work. So you have a certain kind of empathy and kindness and gentleness, how you approach a situation. How would you, by the way, approach a situation when someone offers you an insane notion? How would you help out without giving them a lecture? Just keep this in mind. Sometimes it's better to meet the person where they're at than to give them a lecture.
I don't know whether I have an answer to that, but it's more of a question. Let's say, for argument's sake, there was a very powerful leader, hypothetically, who was pursuing, let's say, wealth for personal gain. And you can see a lot of damage being done by that. then the impression, this is why I haven't got an answer, but so you're saying you don't want to disturb that person's disturbed, and yet at the same time, there seems to be the need for a different kind of action.
There is.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
That's why I asked the question, how would you, without disturbing directly the disturbed understanding?
Well, I think yeah, by example would spring to mind as a phrase. Yeah.
Good. Which is going to be the next verse of being an example.
I would offer questions about why. Why do you want this?
Yeah.
And get them to critically think. So
yeah.
What do I want out of this?
Yeah.
So even that person on their mindset and they're sort of determined to have what they want, and they think it's going to make them happy, just ask them, instead of telling them, ask them, why do you want this? And get them to think for themselves rather than you telling them all the time.
Very simple. Yeah. So Socratic questioning is asking, what other ways could you think about this? Or what evidence do you have to support this? Or what do you really mean by that? Can you explain more? So get them to explain, to verbalize. And in your explaining, you reveal your own gaps. And that's a wonderful way to, as Mike said, to potentially get them to think different. You may not succeed, but potentially. I've tried so many ways to come across to minds that are thinking in a misguided fashion. And I told them things like, this is wrong. I've been through this already. You're going to get eventually out of it. Every single time I failed with resistance and got called off. So what Krishna here is saying is not just it's really practical advice. And a question goes a long way to get them to think. So be their friend. Don't create a situation where you both walk away as non-friends. Then you fail. You create a disharmony. As long as you can engage in some way to get them to think, you don't have to even tell them anything about Advaita or the knowledge. Just one question. What other ways would you think about this? Or is it really true? How do you know that's true? That's it. I'm really curious. That's it. You walk away. You've done your part.
So I'll kind of change. I know what I'm going to bring up is completely different from what we're actually discussing, which is talking about on a personal level, influencing someone else to ultimately find the knowledge at some point.
Right.
But I just wanted, like what Mike described, is someone very powerful who is doing a lot of damage.
Yeah.
There's another way of dealing with that, which is, for example, here, 20 kilometers from where I live, they want to make an open cut lead mine. Okay. So I'll be poisoned. I'll be breathing lead dust.
Got it.
Okay. So okay. You don't try to talk to that person. You make an action group. You put petitions to Parliament.
Got it.
And that's what's been happening here. And so far we've managed to stop the mine.
Okay.
So anyway, I guess what I'm saying is that there's different ways, different situations call for different ways of dealing.
Sometimes, Andre, we don't know the big picture of it. Appears to our eyes that they are doing it for personal gain. Sorry.
Yeah.
Personal gain. And we don't really understand that because we're only seeing the picture in our eyes, how it comes up in our thoughts.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult to make a judgment on a big scale like that. Usually, a leader or something organization, they always appear to be personalized things. Like you hear about it a lot. So, but I think because I've come from the Chinmaya Mission, and I tend to hear all this thing was all personal gain to build up your organization here. But then actually, there's so much of more depth I went into when I actually got involved.
Yeah, I know.
There was so much of spiritual journey there.
Yeah.
So I don't know, how do you look? I don't know what Mike was talking about, but I really think sometimes we have to look at it, a bigger picture.
You do. You can ask a question. What's the intention behind your action? And I just want to find out more, because not only are you pacifying your own mind, but also you're potentially causing them to think. So questions are very powerful. And if you want to know what kind of questions to ask, just AI and say, give me Socratic, 6 types of Socratic questions, because Socrates was a philosopher who performed debates not through confrontation, but through causing you to think about what you're saying. And there's a politician called Kirk in the USA, but I follow him. He's a Republican, not because he's what group he's in, just because he uses this questioning to debate all sorts of ideas, such as lesbian, gay, transvestite groups, all sorts of ideas, political. He's very likable. And I'm thinking, what makes you so likable when you're talking about the most sensitive topics imaginable? And he uses lots of questioning. And finally, the wise person, steadfast in their knowledge, should encourage the ignorant into performing all actions. Because the wise person knows it's going to lead you eventually to see that there's more that needs to be done. And thus, Krishna advises you to lead by example, because you cannot have others copy knowing that you're Brahman. What are you going to do? Carry a halo on your head? The only thing that we can get others to copy is our dharmic actions. So the only thing that a wise person ultimately has influence in is how they carry themselves, and thus how others see that and get slowly influenced. It gets rubbed off. There's no way that someone can copy your understanding of nature of reality, but they can definitely copy your dharmic actions. And so this is what Krishna advises us. Do not disturb the disturbed thinker. And if you are to disturb, then at least do it through questioning to get them to think. And second of all, the wise person encourages the ignorant into performing actions, performing their spiritual works, because they know that it's just part of the journey. You're a character in the game. You will come to the right corner and you will pass the levels. So this is a brilliant message by Krishna, how to conduct oneself in reference to conflict and oppositions of ideas. Purnamadav, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnam eva avashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.